In the tradition of Malcolm X, peace be unto you.
In the tradition of Malcolm X, peace be unto you. Now that we know our five senses, the use of logic, as well as the application of the scientific method, are three blind guides. When we use them to prove the existence of Allah, God, it is only reasonable to ask the question, by what means then can we prove the existence of God? When I was about 3 years of age, my mother taught me how to pray. At my bedside, she would have me kneel down upon my knees as she knelt down beside me. Then she would tell me to close my eyes while folding my hands together and repeat after her these words, and I quote, "Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take." End quote. But at such an age, I had no idea of what it meant to pray. I had no idea of what were the implications of each word I uttered. I had no idea of the presumptions of prayer. I had no idea of what the nature of prayer is. I had no idea that I possessed a soul. I had no idea that I could die. I had no idea, but I simply trusted her and I obediently followed her guidance. Now I know what prayer is. Prayer is not what we have been traditionally taught it to be. Rather, prayer or salah is primarily the highest form of communication possible for a human being. Prayer or salah is telepathy. Telepathy is defined as a communication from one mind to another by extrasensory means, not one body to another by natural means. For example, all animals communicate naturally, either chemically or by bodily movements or by sound percussions. That is because we are both genetically and biologically similar to all other animals on Earth. When reptiles, mammals, and birds develop at the embryonic stage, the first part of their anatomy to begin developing is their central nervous system, or the brain. It makes logical sense because the function of all the vital organs depend upon the autonomic system, which is driven by the central nervous system. We are similar, more or less, to all the species of life I just mentioned, but yet we are more than all other species too, because we have supernatural potential, whereas other species of life do not have supernatural potential. We know that we are more because we possess a property other species of life don't possess. That property is called mind. What makes prayer or salah a unique form of communication is that its prerequisite is the possession of a mind. Among earthly animals, only human beings have what is called mind. Mind is the seat of self-consciousness, self-purpose, knowledge, creativity, and thinking. By the agency of mind, human beings have the potential to have supernatural relations with what we call the divine, or muqaddas, the holy. For if we hold the claim that Allah or God is none other than divine mind to be true, then the only possible connection to God is through the agency of our mind. We may argue by analogy that instruments of our body are to the earth what our mind is to the supernatural dimension. In order to understand telepathic prayer, we must distinguish between mind and consciousness. The two are not identical. Consciousness is an instrument of mind. In this life, consciousness is limited by an unlimited mind. For example, if you take a flashlight into a darkened room, then point it in any direction, you will see only a small fraction of that room. Most of the room remains hidden in darkness. However, our telepathic mind does not happen like material consciousness as well as our effort to think and speak about sense impressions. Telepathic mind makes possible superconsciousness. Superconsciousness happens without our effort because it is not mechanical in nature and thus is unbounded by place and time. In a state of superconsciousness, nothing remains in the dark. All therein is illuminated and transparent. Conversely, that same mind, with all of its potential to participate the grace of God, can fall into depravity here in this lower dimension we call earth. That same mind can become psychotic and sociopathic when it is purposefully, knowingly, or recklessly caused or causes behavior which results in evil. Evil challenges our telepathic growth as toxins destroy the environment and all that depend upon it, and as political and economic oppression degrade the quality of human life. Evil resists our every effort to practice telepathy or prayer. Our enemies do everything to prevent our telepathic potential from actualizing or to keep us from knowing that we have telepathic potential, for they know that they would be absolutely unable to control our telepathic interactions. That is so because their technology is based upon a low grade of energies which cannot affect our relation with God. There is a reason why we are deluged with negative images and lyrics, sugary products, drugs, radiation from cell phones, lead, mercury, and other toxins in the environment. It is to kill our brain and to stop us from praying so that we can be economically exploited. Prayer is the summoning of supernatural power to effect change in the natural dimension of our inner mental and emotional lives. It is an appeal to God to move our mind up from its low and gross grades of earthly energy to the supernatural dimension. Telepathy can effectuate a supernatural change in our inner self. To you, that may seem on the surface to be a limit to supernatural power. One might ask, for instance, why not just eliminate all obstacles to spiritual growth on earth? But it is not a limit by any stretch of the imagination. Hatchlings are not assisted by their mothers. They alone must break through the hard eggshell which encloses them, for only by their own effort will their bodies be strengthened and prepared for use in the natural environment. Those that cannot or do not peck their way through the eggshell will die in the egg, and so too is the case with the development and use of our telepathic power or prayer. The inner life of every person is the source of all human supernatural potential. Jesus referred to this mysterious source of power metaphorically when he said, and I quote, "When you pray, enter into your closet, and when you have shut the door, pray to your Father, which is in secret," end quote. Your closet here means your deep inner self, above and beyond the influence of your unconscious mind. Shutting the door means that you close your eyes as though pulling window blinds shut to unconscious and negative forces. And knowing that your telepathic communication is undiluted and secret between you and the Creator. It is true that a person who prays does have specific presumptions about the existence of a supernatural dimension. Such a person assumes that mind can scan the supernatural dimension in this life and that Allah or God lights that dimension up by divine power. The Holy Quran states this beautifully, wherein it states, and I quote, "Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth," end quote. You and others may ask, well, where is the light of God in this world? Is it the sun and stars? I answer to you, no. Is it electricity? I answer to you, no again. Is it the energy of atoms? I answer to you, no again. Is it deep inside black holes? No. Is it the pyramids of Egypt? I answer to you, no. Is the history of a particular people the source? And I answer again to you, no. Is it the writings of divine books? No. Each of those natural things are low-grade forms of energy. The answer is that the light which veils the indivisible, unseen oneness, that is Allah, is supernatural. It is outside our three-dimensional womb. But just as a developing fetus can hear sounds outside its mother's amniotic sac, our mind can know what is unsensible to the natural senses. You have the potential to telepathically reflect God's light, to see it in your mind's eye by means of telepathy. Remember the little song, "This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine," end quote. Divine light can shine in your mind's eye. If not, then your mind and your mind's eye will remain blind. Stop being overly complex and superficial in your understanding of the symbols and metaphors which point to the same meaning and are used in different spiritual wisdom teachings. A very well-known theologian once said, and I quote, "When you have two competing theories that make exactly the same predictions, the simpler one is the better," end quote. Choose simplicity over complexity. Choose the simplicity of God. The fact is that we all need a state of mind change or a thought change to change material conditions brought about by defective thinking based upon illogical thinking and erroneous assumptions. But praying does not come easy for many people. Prayer for them is not easy for the simple reason that they fail at proving by their sensations and use of logic and the application of the scientific method that God exists. This is the perennial problem faced by atheists and agnostics. The gravity of their intellectual arrogance blinds them into one red herring chase after another, leading them to utter nothingness. Some of them try and try, but tied down and disabled by their intellectual arrogance, they are like the character in Shakespeare's play Hamlet, and I quote, "My words fly up, my thoughts remain below. Words without thoughts never to heaven go," end quote. The kind of attitude and qualities needed for prayer are expressed in the Holy Quran, and I quote, "And I seek help through patience and prayer, and indeed it is difficult except for the humble," end quote. Humility, patience, and prayer thus open wide the gate for the actualization of our inherent potential for telepathic power and our growth into an entirely new creature. A great philosopher was asked once what he thought God is. He answered, and I quote, "God is thought, thinking itself eternally," end quote. If we assume the premise that God is thought to be true, then we are compelled to conclude that Allah is not material substance, that Allah cannot be material substance. Thus, there is no material means by which we can communicate with God because matter is mindless. In fact, we must necessarily conclude that all matter is of a more or less low grade of energy, which cannot be associated with Allah or God. We know that is true from a study of the periodic table or chart of natural elements. From hydrogen to uranium, all the elements are mindless fragments of matter. And finally, we are compelled to conclude that praying by means of any material object or praying to any material object is dehumanizing and an absolute waste of mental energy, because there can be no telepathic mediation from your mind through that which is mindless to the divine mind. Furthermore, if we accept the premise that God is thought thinking itself eternally to be true, then we not only affirm God and thought to be identical, but also that God thought is gender free. It is neither male nor female. Indeed, we affirm the illumination of all the worlds to be the product of divine thinking like an ever-flowing creative stream of infinite grades of being without end and having no beginning. Our potential telepathic power can only grow by practicing it. We can only practice it by praying to Allah or God. For example, a human fetus has the potential power of its bodily limbs and its sense impressions or sensations. Touch, hearing, sight, taste, and smell. But only by beginning to use them while floating in the amniotic fluid of its mother's amniotic sac will the newborn be prepared to actualize the potentials of its limbs and five senses outside of its mother's amniotic sac. Likewise, our telepathic potential is sheathed in our brain as a fetus is sheathed in its mother's amniotic sac. We are bound and dependent upon earth as a fetus is bound by an umbilical cord and dependent on its mother. But despite our limitations, our power of telepathy can be used by us here and now to communicate with God. By doing so, it will prepare us for our supernatural existence outside the egg-shaped enclosure of this natural dimension which we participate now. Above and beyond our anxieties, our material attractions, our screams of pain, our divisive languages, our animal gestures, and our crude symbols, some of us will come to exist in an entirely new supernatural dimension, free from all physical restraints. Therein, we shall be telepathically connected in thought that never ends. We will, in no time at all, and therein, be an entirely new creature. For as the human being is born out of the unity of sperm and ovum into the watery sac of amniotic fluid and then into a world of sunlight, so too shall our minds, now sheathed in its natural womb, be born into a dimension of oneness, lighted by the thought of God. I am Dr. Stephen Nur Ahmed. Peace be unto you.